culture was thriving. There was artistic innovation round every corner. It was the swinging 1960s. From the smoky clubs of West London emerged a new sound. One influenced by the mod style of the era. Leading this sonic revolution was a young group known as The Who. Renowned for their guitar-smashing antics and roaring amplifiers, The Who swiftly ascended to international stardom. Their distinctive sound would forever alter the landscape of rock music.
There is no act in rock and roll that's like The Who. They're a unique band. No one is like The Who.
They weren't just another band. They were a full-blown revolution. The Who's story unfolds in Acton, West London, where Roger Daltrey, Pete Townshend, and John Entwistle grew up. All three attended Acton County Grammar School, where Townshend and Entwistle struck up a friendship. Both were musically gifted, forming a jazz band named the Confederates at a young age. Townshend attended Ealing Art College, which would later influence his work with The Who. Daltrey, a year above, was expelled at 15 and started a band called the Detours, eventually leading to his meeting with Entwistle and Townshend.
It doesn't surprise me that Roger Daltrey was expelled from school at 15. He's the kind of guy that wants things done his way, and he has a vision. And some people, be it a band member or a school administrator, can't handle that.
Daltrey's chance encounter with Entwistle, who was carrying a bass, led to his recruitment. And in turn, Townshend was invited to join as a guitarist.
Townshend came back from art school one day and I think told Tom Wilkes and another flatmate, "I've got the name of the band, The Hair and the Who." And they looked at him and thought, "You what?" But they talked him back down to earth and said, "You've got to shorten that name. It's just too long a name." So he said, "What if we became The Who?" It's just a great name, The Who, because it's the kind of name that mom and dad, who were so important to alienate in 62, 63, 64, 65. So important you alienated mom and dad somehow. The Who? That allowed mom and dad to announce themselves as squares by going, "He's going to see The Who." The Who? Yeah, The Who. Who? The Who. And that's a brilliant 60s name.
In 1964, Keith Moon joined the band after an impressive gig on drums, marked by his unique and frenetic energy, causing him to break a drum pedal and tear a drum skin.
Classic lineup of The Who is, of course, Pete Townshend on guitar. He's the songwriter. He sang some harmony vocals. On drums, the legendary Keith Moon. He had a crazy drum style. On bass, the great John Entwistle, a virtuoso bass player. And then finally, the singer is the diminutive Roger Daltrey. He's actually not a tall person, but he has the voice of someone who's 10 feet tall. He has the stage presence of someone who's 10 feet tall. And he was in many ways the most ambitious member of the band. But he's the one that was saying, "Go, go, go, we can do this," which every band needs.
With Keith's addition, The Who switched to manager Peter Meaden, who envisioned transforming the band. In the early 1960s, London's streets saw the emergence of a new subculture known as mod. Shaped by fashion, music, and scooters. Meaden ingeniously decided to target this group directly, capturing the attention of fashion-forward, amphetamine-loving, club-going, record-buying youth. The Who adopted the classic mod style of tailored suits and scooters, even renaming themselves High Numbers. Even if it seemed somewhat contrived, the group were almost immediately welcomed into the subculture.
It helps if a band can attach themselves to an established audience, because it brings them an audience much more rapidly than just gigging and seeing who comes forward. If a band sends out by their appearance, by their repertoire, by their name, a signal that we're this, knowing there is a potential audience out there, they can go from being a relative dot on the scene to a growing target.
The mod movement, I think, thrived on the fact that young men could get work easily, and quite good paying work. So it was easy to get a job. It wasn't always good work. It might be dirty jobs or dirty work or very, very hard work or physical work or whatever, but you could get work. And what you did is you worked hard and you played hard. I know it's a cliche, but that's what you did. The mod movement was about young guys who had the money to buy the clothes and pose in them.
They produced the two songs Zoot Suit and I'm the Face.
I'm the face, baby, is that cool? I'm the face, baby, is that cool? I'm the face if you want it. I'm the face if you want it, dear. All the others are third-class tickets by me, baby, is that clear? I'm the big wheel, baby.
Unfortunately, the release flopped, failing to reach the top 50. As the mod subculture flourished, it encountered a rival in the rockers, styled after 1950s American greasers, who viewed the mods as effeminate due to their tailored fashion. The two groups clashed in infamous skirmishes in England's seaside towns in the mid-1960s.
But we couldn't come into the Margate end here because the rowdyism here last night. I witnessed the burning of deck chairs on the beach.
Were there a lot of them?
Yes, all crowds. We couldn't move. It was jammed. About 200, I should think.
Why have you come down here today, then?
Because all the rest of the mods have come down. Came down yesterday. The rockers are the ones that do.
Were they using knives?
Yeah.
Soon, High Numbers reverted to The Who and became known for a performance style that set them apart from other bands. Two filmmakers called Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp would see the band performing at the Railway Hotel in Wealdstone and were eager to make a film documenting their performances.
They were enamored with The Who, so much so, two guys didn't decide just to make a documentary on them. They sort of scrapped that after filming a little bit. They said, let's manage them.
Let me even get my heart routine. I'm about the only girl I ever loved. Only one thing I gotta dance just to keep on the right. Gotta dance just to keep on the right. Oh, the block, the twist. Everybody, it goes like this. You gotta dance on the street.
The duo would end up replacing Meaden as the group's manager. While performing at the Railway, The Who's unique performance style began to gain attention. In June 1964, Townsend famously smashed his guitar on stage, igniting an appetite in their audience for destructive theatrics.
It was an accident, and the audience went crazy for Townsend hurting the guitar. So people didn't have a lot of money then, so it was incredible that the guy would smash something on purpose. So they incorporated it into the act with Daltrey swinging the microphone around as it's squealing like a lasso in a cowboy corral. And the great Keith Moon knocking over the drums and all that stuff.
The Who became known for this form of autodestructive art, informed by Townsend's art school education.
The art school scene is incredibly important for so many of the English rock and rollers, but no one more so than Peter Townsend. Townsend's difference is he took graphic, artistic ideas, as in easel, oils, paints, watercolors, sculpting, presentation and brought them into the musical world of The Who.
By the mid-60s, The Who's residency at the Marquee Club in Soho was growing in popularity. They released the Kinks-inspired single, I Can't Explain, which became a hit on pirate radio stations.
There wasn't a lot of rock and roll on the radio. So you had these phenomenons like Radio Luxembourg. What a gas it must have been to be a DJ on Radio Luxembourg. And you've got hip, young men and women playing the greatest records of all time. And so what are the hip young people of the day looking for? They're looking for something like The Who.
In 1965, they performed the song on the TV show Ready, Steady, Go. Their next single, Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, featured heavy feedback and other distortions, creating an experimental track.
Townsend realized that volume in and of itself is now my friend. Feedback, which is the great byproduct of volume on stage, is no longer the enemy. Townsend was doing something creative with it. It wasn't just volume for volume's sake. It was spectacle, where the idea of breaking this equipment and creating this feedback was part of the show that he got out of his art school idea of auto-destruction. It was as much part of the act as Moon not keeping straight time and being crazy on the toms and all that.
Tensions within the band often arose due to Daltrey's leadership style. Unlike other bands, The Who, except for Moon and Entwistle, didn't consider themselves close friends.
You know, they were never friends, if you will. They had a common mission, but this is a band that has fistfights.
While touring in September of the same year, Daltrey got into a fight with Moon, who flushed his amphetamines down the toilet. The rest of the group saw this as the last straw, and they sacked Daltrey upon returning to London. Daltrey, though sometimes overbearing, was also the group's business-minded member.
Every band needs a sharp businessman and an enthusiast that will not let the others ruin it, and that's Roger Daltrey. In the Ramones, it's Johnny Ramone. Every band has to have somebody that says, focus, focus, focus. We're getting a little too out there over here. Push, 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 stay in charge, focus. We're gonna do this. The money's gonna come in, it's gonna be better, focus. And that's Roger Daltrey and The Who.
He was reinstated under the agreement that the band would become more of a democracy.
The Who aren't the only one that are like this. If the dynamic works, I guess it works. Fleetwood Mac would be another great band of the era. Look how many lineups they've had.
The chemistry of The Who was strange, wasn't it? Because it was not about. It wasn't like we were a gang. We weren't a gang band. We weren't actually drawn together by a love of common music. In fact, our musical tastes were quite disparate. You know, Keith Moon was a huge surf music fan, and John Entwistle liked twangy guitar, and you would often find us all listening to different music. So, but what drew us together was, I think. And this sounds a little bit sort of like Ronnie Corbett, really, or you know, but a kind of a love of show business.
With the release of My Generation, the band achieved its highest charting single in the UK, reaching number 2.
Why don't you all fade away? I said, yeah, don't try and dig what we all see. Try to cause a big sensation. I'm just talking about my generation. My generation. My generation.
The song's stuttered chorus mimicked Ahmad on amphetamines. Further solidifying themselves as the poster boys for the scene.
That's classic, that stutter, because the stutter, to the hip young mods of the day and the people on the scene, to dance all night, you need energy. So they would take speed to keep the gang going forward.
Their debut album, also called My Generation, came out in late 1965.
A record like that is a groundbreaking, signpost, iconic, classic record saying, hello, we're like you, and you get an audience that's drawn to it like moths to a flame.
Their next album, a quick one, reached number 4 in the UK charts. Ready, Steady, Go. The show, where the band had performed numerous times in their early career, ended. The mod era was fading, and The Who needed to evolve their act. Their managers, Lambert and Stamp, realized that breaking into the U.S. market was essential.
Who came over in '67 and started playing the hippie ballroom circuit, carousel ballrooms. You know, every town had a Fillmore West or Fillmore East. It's not just New York and LA. So the Who came over working that circuit and got invited to play at Monterey.
Their performances overseas were well received, offering a contrast to other hippie acts of the time.
Mama Cass Elliot, amongst others, said, we'd never experienced anything like that. We'd never seen somebody break their equipment. And there were those of us that thought, oh my God, they're trying to destroy the entire stage.
The Who's appetite for destruction was unleashed after their performances were over. Moon would become known for wrecking hotel rooms and cherry-bombing toilets. On Moon's 21st birthday, the band caused $24,000 of damage to their hotel. On the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, Moon orchestrated a scheme to put explosives in his drum kit, which ended up detonating, throwing Moon off his stage and cutting his arm.
A lot of the stories we hear about Keith Moon are up to two things. One, he's alcoholic and he's been drinking and he's bored. Two, he's got money and a certain amount of power. So no, they're not going to be treated by the police in the same way that you or I are. And Keith Moon had the cops come and get away with it, throwing cherry bombs in a place like New York City where a cherry bomb could be anything. You know, we're a violent society in America.
Their next album, The Who Sell Out, marked the band's exploration of making a concept album. It was intercut with adverts and jingles to simulate a pirate radio station broadcast. The album would pave the way for more conceptual projects in the future. In 1968, the band began creating their album, Tommy, billed as a rock opera. Rock operas often take the form of concept albums that tell a story throughout their tracks. The Who's Tommy narrates the life story of the fictional character Tommy Walker, a deaf, dumb, and blind boy who excels at pinball. Tommy was a critical and commercial hit, turning the band members into millionaires. It later became a film and play. In 1969, The Who performed at Woodstock Festival.
We'd had such a fabulous couple of years. With Tommy, what actually happened is that we did Tommy. We had our fingers crossed, you know, we put it out and at first it looked like it was going to flop and then it took off. And then we had the good luck, and I tried not to do this show, by the way, to get onto the Woodstock Festival, which launched Vaunted us, gave another, so the album had already been in the charts and dropped out. We did Woodstock, it went back in again, and then a year later the film came out and it went in the charts again.
his son was leading him, and he just does the rest. He's got crazy flipper fingers, never seen him fall. That death of a black kid, some place to be pinball.
This new era of The Who saw a departure from their mod roots. They sported longer hair and unbuttoned shirts on stage. They followed Woodstock with the Isle of Wight Festival. By the turn of the decade, The Who was considered one of the world's top rock bands. After the resounding success of Tommy, Townsend was inspired to work on a similarly conceptual project called Lifehouse and embarked on a series of experimental shows to unveil the new content.
Well, the Lifehouse project by Peter Townsend was sort of a logical, illogical follow-up to Tommy. It was another one of his sort of rock operas, but even sort of more grandiose. He had this almost indecipherable, inexplicable idea. The reason I can't really articulate it better is I've read innumerable Pete Townsend articles on Lifehouse, being a mega Who fan, and he's never articulated it quite well. You can't quite get what he's going at. So Daltrey, being a pragmatic guy, and Entwistle being a bit of a cynic, pulled him aside and said, this project isn't really going anywhere.
His bandmates viewed the project as overly complex, pushing for a more straightforward album. Because of this, Lifehouse would morph into their next album, Who's Next?
I think their most accessible album of their entire career. It's the one album you could give somebody, this is what they're about, see what you think.
The album is noted for its early use of synthesizers in rock, with tracks like Baba O'Reilly becoming staples in a The Who set. After touring The Who's next album, the band decided to go on hiatus until May 1972. When they returned to work on a new album, conflicts began to arise. Townsend and Daltrey had differing visions for the band, with Daltrey emphasizing the business aspect while Townsend pursued complex, non-commercial projects. Meanwhile, Moon's self-destructive behavior spiraled out of control due to escalating drug and alcohol abuse.
The band were very potent and very powerful, very successful, but they were also a little bit off the wall. Our management was falling apart. There was a kind of anarchy going on in the band, of anarchy of ego.
The band started working on their next album, Quadrophenia, the following year. This album served as an homage to the mod subculture, narrating the story of a young man named Jimmy, deeply entrenched in this world.
Jimmy in Quadrophenia, his story is that he loses everything. He loses his religion, he loses his mother, he loses his father, he loses his best friend, he loses any possibility of getting the girl that he's fallen in love with when he was a boy. He loses his band, he loses the mods, and finally he loses his hero, who is not one of the Who, but the Ace Face, who ends up working as a bellboy down in Brighton. So he loses everything, and that's really what the story is about. And the reason why in the story it's important that he loses everything is because he becomes Mr. Everyman of the teenage world, in which he then has to kind of ask the big question, which is, who am I? What is it that I want? Where am I going to go? That's kind of where my version of the story ends. I felt the band needed to look back at its roots, and I thought the best way to do that was to look back at, you know, a young man who would be, if you like, a kind of a model of a combination of all of our boy fans from that period. And there's some confusion about the idea that this is also about the four members of The Who. In a sense it is, but it's not really about Roger, Pete, Keith and John from the band, and it was about the fact that this boy looked at the band and saw himself in each of them.
Much like Tommy, the album's narrative would later evolve into a film.
It landed in this as the most successful, simple rock opera that I've ever kind of come up against. You know, young mod guy, has a bad day, ends up on a rock in the rain. You know, that's it. But produced all this lovely music, and I'm really proud of the songs I wrote.
Quadrophenia was really great. It reflected upon The Who as what they were and what they'd lost. They were no longer mods. They were superstars. They were rock gods.
Tensions between Townsend and Daltrey persisted during the creation of their next album, The Who by Numbers.
The Who by Numbers is an interesting album. By this time, they were growing apart. The Who by Numbers, they couldn't even get together for a proper photo shoot for the front cover.
Their disagreements continued as they prepared for the album's tour in 1976.
Around 1976, The Who had done so much work in North America that pretty much frazzled. You know, they were really on the road a lot. And they started to go their separate ways after every gig, which is a bad sign for any band. When everyone goes, and they only come back for sound check. This is not good. It's understandable, but it's not good.
Keith Moon's health deteriorated, and it became increasingly apparent that he would be unable to perform live. In 1978, they recorded Who Are You?, during which Moon's performance notably suffered.
It's very difficult for any of us to handle that level of fame and success. Any of us. Moon, of course, spent money was like water coming out of the tap. As long as that water's flowing out, hey, let's spend it. You know, let it go down the drain. There's not much sadder than watching an actor or an athlete or a musical act of whatever sort, solo or a group, what have you, trying to relive their youth over and over again, trying to squeeze back into the leather trousers one more time.
Tragedy struck after a gathering at one of Paul McCartney's parties when Moon ingested 32 pills meant to combat his alcoholism. Tragically, this combination of alcohol and medication proved fatal, and Keith Moon was found dead the following day.
He created a style of his own, which is very hard to do on any instrument. And I just hope that people won't remember him as the national press have done by Moon the Loon and all this business, because really, as a musician, he was probably second to none. You know, he was a really excellent musician.
I don't think The Who were ever the same after Keith Moon died. The original lineup of The Who are unimitatable. You cannot imitate, you cannot capture the early Who.
Following Moon's untimely death, The Who's lineup underwent multiple changes. Kenny Jones from the Small Faces joined as the band's drummer, but his drumming style diverged significantly from Moon's, leading to criticism from the band. In 1979, The Who found themselves in the midst of their first tour in the United States without Moon. During a sold-out show in Cincinnati, Ohio, tragedy struck. From early on in the day, a crowd began to form outside the venue. Against the closed doors of the Riverfront Coliseum, the huddle of concertgoers became tighter and tighter. When the crowd heard what they thought was the band starting early, a frenzy began, causing the fans to push towards the mostly closed doors.
It was getting cold, and the people wanted to get in, and they did not open enough doors on time to allow the volume of traffic to come in smoothly and efficiently.
Insufficient staff and police presence made it impossible to control the overwhelming force. Tragically, the crush would prove fatal for 11 fans, their ages ranging between 15 and 27. Dozens more involved sustained injuries from the stampede.
We was up at the top and everybody was just pushing. I was on the bottom for about 20 minutes.
You was being stomped on for 20 minutes?
I was. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was dying. I lost my shoe.
People were just getting stamped on, and she was underneath, and I was trying to pull her out, and everybody was stamping on everybody.
You couldn't get up?
No, you couldn't get up, man. People were pushing all over everywhere.
I was scared. I was scared for my life. I had to get out.
The show continued without The Who's knowledge of the unfolding tragedy outside. They only learned of the events after their final encore, as canceling the concert was feared to incite a riot and worsen the disaster. The band was understandably devastated upon learning of the tragedy after the show. Years later, Townsend recalled his anger after performing while this tragedy was unfolding. The group would release 2 albums with Kenny Jones before embarking on a farewell tour ending in 1982.
I'll tell you what, there's a bit of a crush down the front. If everyone could just shuffle back a bit, it would help out. We go on for a long time. We can't keep that up.
Those 2 80s albums with Kenny Jones, they're all right, but they're not, I don't know, they just never captured the Who fans' heart in the way that My Generation did, or A Quick One While He's Away did, or Baba O'Reilly did. They just didn't, they never got the lightning it had left. The horse had left the stable. They never got the lightning trap back under the glass again.
The following year, Townsend announced at a press conference that he was leaving The Who, essentially ending the band in its current form. In the years following The Who's dissolution, the surviving members engaged in various reunion tours and events. In 2002, a day before embarking on a U.S. tour, Entwistle was found dead of a heart attack at the age of 57.
I miss him really terribly, and just miss his demeanour. And he had this way of smoking a cigarette, of drinking a drink with his finger out like that. And if you asked him a really hard question, you say, "So John, should we do one of your songs on this tour?" And he'd kind of go, I miss that.
His passing prompted Townsend and Daltrey to reassess their tumultuous relationship and grow closer.
And Roger and I are always honoured when The Who are honoured, because there's just two of us left. This was a band of four people that started in London, and so it's an honour for all of us. I think being, stratified to some extent by losing Keith Moon and losing John Entwistle relatively recently in John's case, we know it's just, we have each other, and we're supported by great musicians, and we're very, very lucky. We go back to school together, so it's great to still have that friendship and that relationship. I don't know that I know anybody that well that from those days. There's a few people that I know from art school that I still know and see occasionally, but when you have friends that go back when you're 60 and you have friends that go back 45 years, that's very cool, and because we've been through so much together.
The Who has been a major influence on subsequent musicians and bands, transforming rock music and inspiring groups like AC/DC and Guns N' Roses. Their music has transcended genres, attracting a diverse fan base over the years.
Looking back at Who's catalog, there's an element of the importance and the beauty of youth, and how glorious it is to be young and how frustrating it is to be young. Over and over again, Townsend sings about communication and young people and their frustrations and their desires, and how important that is, and how those young people's desires and frustrations formulate what they become later on in adulthood. You want peace and love, you want romantic ballads. That's not The Who. The Who are more frustratingly philosophical about what life can be. The mod thing about clean living under difficult circumstances, that phrase, clean living under difficult circumstances, is the mod answer to we will be of low income, we will be low on the totem pole of British society, but we will nonetheless look sharp, we will nonetheless know all the new dances, we will have scooters that are pristine without a speck of dirt on them, even though they're riding on the stinky streets of London. We will do this, we will do that. And I think that's The Who's legacy. No matter how dark it is or who you are, you can still, as it were, fight the power and be somebody. That's why The Who has that aggression and that anger in their music. They're upset that they were dealt this hand, this poker hand to start life with. And they will not go down easily. Their legacy is we will live cleanly under difficult circumstances.
You think we look pretty good together. You think my shoes are made of leather.
be all complicated. I'm pretty young, but I'm just back to substitute me for him. Substitute my coat for Jim.
In rock history, few bands have encapsulated the spirit of youth like The Who. Their groundbreaking experiments with instruments and explosive live performances reshaped rock music forever. From their early days amid the mod and rocker subcultures in London to their epic conceptual rock operas, The Who consistently demonstrated unparalleled innovation. They've inspired generation after generation to rebel, unite, and rock out. The Who were pioneers who led a rock revolution.